everybody. Welcome back to Your Full Crew podcast. I'm Dawn Zoldi, your host, and this month we are focused on the theme of drones, and we have some amazing articles to talk to you about today, from a drone superhighway in the UK, spraying drones, the DoD's defense industrial-based cybersecurity policy that recently came out, as well as some drone interference at NFL games. So not only that, but we have amazing guests to talk to you about these articles today. And we're going to go around the horn just in 1 second. But before we do, I want to really give a shout out to our sponsors, without whom this show and our others would not be possible. So our sponsors for this one are TruWeather Solutions, Mark 43, the Akin Law Firm, and Valmont. So thank you all for sponsoring this. And let's go around the horn now, and we will go ahead and do those intros. I'm going in alphabetical order, so we're going to go with Collin. You are up first.
Yeah, hey everyone. Thanks for having me on here. My name's Collin, founder and president of FlyRoute, and FlyRoute, we provide athletic drone film to visionary athletic programs. So that's primarily high school football programs, lacrosse, and we do have some collegiate as well programs. And yeah, it's a lot of fun to go out there and film at sporting events and provide that service primarily for coaching purposes, also some media usage as well. But excited to get into the topics today.
And Collin, by the way, is from Colorado. That's where we met, and he will be on the Dawn of Autonomy later in the year in December. So super excited to have you on the show, Collin. Going again, this is making my brain work, alphabetical order. We've got John, the Drone Jesus McBride, with us from the Droning Company. Great to have you, John, as always.
Yeah. Oh, thank you always for having me. Quick stand-in as far as Stuart being not feeling well and discussing today, but it's an honor, of course, to be on your show and kind of talk about the subjects we're going to talk to. I currently hold the position of chairman for the Droning Company, kind of a new position for me. I think that you actually recommended that to Stuart Smith, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, said if there was the guy that could kind of help direct this company and give you guys a way to go, put a rudder on the ship, so to speak. I really appreciate that recommendation, as well as what we're going to try to do for the drone industry as representation of the Droning Company.
Well, awesome. Again, John, always great to have you. All right, we've got Cody Retlich from DroneAdair.
Hey, yeah, Don, thanks for having me on the show today. I really appreciate it. Some awesome crew here as well. So, yeah, my name's Cody Retlich. I am a Midwesterner living up in Wisconsin, but I'm the founder and CEO of DroneAdair. We're a drone-focused SaaS platform to help drone pilots grow and scale their business, tie into enterprise clients to help create some recurring revenue streams, and then help automate enterprises in their missions as well. So super excited to be on today and talk about some really cool articles.
And Cody's been a great friend to our shows, not only on the Dawn of Drones last year, but in January also on the Dawn of Autonomy, talking about their new enterprise solution. So again, great to have you, Cody. And last but certainly not least, our good friend and a friend of all of our shows and events, Lacey Wean from Carahsoft.
Awesome. Thanks, Dawn. Thank you, as always, for having me join today. So hi, everyone. I'm Lacey Wean with Carahsoft. I am the director of sales over a couple of our technology verticals, geospatial, space, autonomy and robotics, and law enforcement and public safety technology. If you're not familiar with Carahsoft, we're a government-focused technology distributor. So working with all public sector government to help them acquire the technology they need to meet their mission requirements, and working with many large and small technology manufacturers to help them do business with the government. Located here in the DC and Northern Virginia area.
So Carahsoft had a huge presence at Exponential this year, quite the rager of a party on Tuesday night. And for those, I know we're going to talk about other articles, but I have to give a shout out, frankly, to myself. I did an article for Inside Unmanned Systems magazine about the blue and green and other colors of money type programs to work with the government, and Caresoft was mentioned in there. So if you want to learn more about that, check out my website, check out that article. It's the most recent one I have up. So let's get right into our first article. This one, I'd say it's from John, but let's be real. This is about the UK, and we know who picked it. It was Stuart Smith, who could not join us today. But John, you are stepping in, and I'm sure you've had a chance to digest this article. Tell us what it's all about and why you think it's important.
Well, this is, as mentioned, a little bit before my time when I joined the company, when it was published on the Droning Company's website. However, I was just recently in the UK, and I have a lot of, Autel business that we've done over there in the UK, and this absolutely came up in the capability of using Dragonfish as an opportunity or an aircraft within this corridor that has been defined as basically a drone OK space. What this means primarily is the integration between drone traffic and air traffic, manned aircraft traffic. And this has been a real big problem overall, is how to establish not just corridors, but how we operate together, and what requirements are going to be on the aircraft, as well as what needs to be on the other end to make sure they can see or communicate or talk to. So ADS-B has always been something that has been kind of an idea, and when you don't have every drone transmitting ADS-B and a controlled amount of drones, there's a possibility that this can be integrated, as far as those aircraft go. It's interesting because, again, Karim Kozlip from Auto Robotics was also part of the company that's kind of fronting this, Angel, and they've been working together with the government to help fund and kind of create this corridor. I think it's definitely a direction that we need to go as everywhere in the world. I know you've had Skybird on here, who also has corridor initiatives on their operations and what they're doing to simplify just the spot to a spot. We're not doing inspections, we're not doing anything like that, but mostly focused on drone delivery and assets that can be moved, or products that can be moved quickly between 2 or 3 or 4 stations as they go along. Millions of dollars have been invested into this, so we'll see how it turns out and how they can be kind of the forerunner of this type of operation.
So, John, this is a 165-mile drone. They're calling it Superhighway. Do you know? And it's a 2-year project called the Project Skyway Initiative with, as you mentioned, Altitude Angel and others. I guess my question is this R&D? In other words, is this research and development for drone delivery in the UK, almost like our NASA or the FAA test sites and some of the NASA sandboxes we have here? Or is this no kidding an operational evaluation? Do you know?
This is a no kidding operation. I mean, there's a lot of testing and test sites that we have to test equipment, to test transmission systems, to test connections, to test communications. There's all of these things that are available to test, but this is real world. They want to be able to use and dedicate this space into real world. Well, define the rules of what that is going to be, and then once they can kind of figure out how to incorporate into that, adding more technology that might be available today, but looking to the future on what's going to be available. Because quite frankly, as mentioned, if ADS-B, remote ID, all of these other things that are not traditionally on drones, like right now, we're just barely incorporating this type of how air traffic controllers, and I say that in quotation because it isn't really air traffic controllers that would be monitoring this, but still there has to be a way for each drone to know what each one is doing, each operator in that case, each company, and then those that they're reporting to keep it safe enough that, again, if manned air traffic is moving. What I think is really interesting here, Don, is that this puts a little bit more accountability to the manned aircraft side. Because right now we kind of do willy-nilly flying. I call it willy-nilly flying. If they're in not controlled airspace, they can kind of do whatever. But this is one of those areas that go between and through controlled airspace within that space. And so they have to be even more responsible pilots as manned aircraft to understand that these are operating aircraft just like them. There might not be people in it, but So instead of testing it, they've got to make sure all the systems are working.
Yeah, that's huge. And by the way, John, we've got Serge from Peru giving greetings and saying, "Way to go, Drone Jesus." So, hey, Serge, thanks for dialing in. Cody, I'm going to go to you next. And what are your thoughts on this article or what's going on in the UK?
Yeah, I mean, after looking into it a little bit more, I mean, I think it's a great way for not only the advancement of this in a way where we can integrate it potentially to something into the United States at some point. I know there's other organizations like John had mentioned that have already started to kind of look into these as an option, but I think it's a feasible way for us to just actually start doing it, right? And actually testing it out and knowing what is going to happen, because we can only, put it out there so much and the what ifs of if this happens or if this happens, right? Or strikes or bird strikes or a manned aircraft is potentially flying too low as well, right? There's a lot of different scenarios that you can play out in your head and just try to plan for as much as you can. But ultimately, until it's fully rolled out and it's not even, like John said, it's not really a test, but it is a test, right? I mean, it's trying to figure it out. And I think there's no better way to do that than just putting it out there and figuring out what we need to do in order to learn from that, and then also push forward as we kind of continuously grow our drone delivery and autonomous, vehicles and drones in our way, our airspace in the United States as well. So I'll be following this close just because it's awesome as well. I had someone the other day ask me about well, how long until where drones are going to be carrying people and how long? And it's like, well, it's closer than you think, right? People think it's so far off, but I think this is an awesome, really test market for us to learn from in the United States.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lacey, I'm going to go to you next. I mean, you dwell quite a bit in the government space. I mean, this is a point-to-point drone delivery with autonomous vehicles, another area that you're working in on a daily basis. As you read this, what were you thinking?
Yeah, it definitely is. So as I read through this, it was really interesting. And to be honest, the first time I've seen this article. So I'm glad that this one was picked. Yeah, and I agree with what John and Cody were saying too. I think there's a lot we can learn from this, and definitely a good test environment. I think some of these capabilities we'll definitely see more of in the government space as well. So really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if there was one message loud and clear from Exponential this past week, it was a focus on autonomy, and not just on the military side. And we saw a bigger military presence this year, I think, than in more recent years at that show, but also just across the board. And so, Collin, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a super interesting topic, one that is going to definitely need to be addressed as we look forward towards the future of autonomy drones and how to create these roadways in the sky. And where my mind goes is kind of the air traffic control standpoint and managing safety, managing separation of aircraft from what John was talking about with the manned aircraft and autonomous, is that a lot of onus is going to be on manned flight, especially I think a lot about emergency helicopter usage. For those who are flying their drones out there, have probably encountered a helicopter at one point or another that's been in their vicinity. So I think about they're changing altitudes all the time. What's the altitude that they're thinking they're going to maintain these roadways, superhighways in the sky, and how do manned aircraft avoid these?
No, I agree. And, this is 165 miles. So clearly we're talking beyond visual line of sight, BVLOS here, right? And, one crowd that was really vocal when the BVLOS Aviation Rulemaking Committee report came out, that 400-page monster ARC report, were the hot air balloon crowd, because, sometimes they're in this same space and they can't move. They can't maneuver quick enough to get out of the way. And if it's an autonomous drone, right? And imagine the one-to-many scenario where you've got a pilot, controlling multiple drones on this highway at one time. Now there's a hot air balloon. This is going to be interesting. And I love that I agree. I don't know if it was you or Cody or John that said we kind of just have to do it. And I agree. I just hope that this will be really, really safe, because all we need is like one incident and then it'll just set everybody back, right? Like, oh, this is what we were talking about. So we do have a LinkedIn user here saying, and by the way, if you're out on LinkedIn, depending on your settings, we may not be able to identify your name, which is the case here. I find it interesting in the fact it makes us aware that in the drone space, as well as being drone operators, we have to become a little bit smarter to make sense regular pilots, not just on the commercial level. So, okay, so yeah, definitely not just on the commercial side, on the defense side too, and pretty much operators all around have to, have that awareness of the airspace. So this is a great test case, though. I'll be interested in learn more, John. Be following the droning company for maybe a follow-on article about this, since Stuart clearly has a heart for it, being from the UK. We're going to move to that next article in 1 second, but before we do, I just want to say, in the US, we've got, the Choctaw Nation down in Durant, Oklahoma, looking to connect the DFW area. Right, we've got the Tulsa folks doing their own area. We've got New Air in New York. We've got the Vantas network and some of the corridors and things they're carving out in North Dakota. And the list goes on and on. So, of course, not even to mention the key site down in Texas that hopefully we'll see some action there in August, as promised by the FAA and NASA recently at Amsterdam Drone Week. So we've got a lot of stuff in our own backyard. It's going to be great to see all that happening. And NASA and the FAA basically foot stomped. This is not R&D, this key site down in Texas. This is an operational evaluation, whatever that means. All right, on to the next article. This one is Cody's article, and it's about a very specific use case involving agricultural spraying. So Cody, over to you.
Yeah, I picked this article, one, because I think it's just more personal to me, as kind of my journey into the drone industry had started in agricultural, right? I mentioned before, I'm in the Midwest, I'm a Wisconsinite. There's farms all over us, right? I mean, I didn't necessarily grow up on a farm, but I had them all around us and my friends were on them. So when I first started in the industry, I was in the agricultural space. We were trying to understand how farmers were able to get higher crops yield, and be able to go back and spray their crops in their fields and get higher yields. Because at the end of the day, right, damaged crops is immediately losing money for them. So I just thought, back to that first, and this is like my first intro to drones, almost about 13, 14 so years ago now, where I look at the transition of, we were getting just absolute berated off of farmers' fields to just get out of here, we'll shoot those things down. Don't you dare bring those. And it just shows you, like, it's come a long way, not only in the agricultural space, but a lot of industries. But I think that, as that generation, right, the old farmer adage of like, hey, we do it this way, we've always done it this way, has kind of changed hands, and it's become a new generation. Rentizo is one that I think has really been an amazing leader in the space in a lot of ways of providing not only the drone, but then also creating an opportunity for drone pilots that, not every drone pilot's a business person. Not everybody wants to run their own business and do the sales and the marketing and understand that, they have to create these processes and these SOPs and understand where they're going to really get into a market and penetrate it. So I think what they've done with not only their spray drones, but also this new, Acre Connect, their software, really allows a new set of pilots in the industry to just be able to grow a business from the get-go by having kind of all of this in place. But I also think it puts a big onus on like enterprise solutions out there, right? There's so many industries that we all know here, and most of the listeners do as well, that are using drones today, but having an enterprise solution that can monitor, your work orders, your usage in this case of like where they've sprayed, where they haven't sprayed. How can we look at that data and understand, NDVI versus what's how their chloroform levels and everything very specific to this application, but also just across other industries, right? It's like, how can you as an enterprise or someone that's new into the industry start off by streamlining your business and having a solution that it can ultimately get you to scale a lot faster and a lot easier, and have also your customers then at the end of the day be happy and have them a place to go to. So I think Ranchitos does an awesome job in their specific, industry to help their pilot network, as well as just the community and the market as a whole. So I just think it's cool as well. If you've ever seen these spray drones, I mean, they're massive, right? But they're just super cool. And I hope the technology just continues to be adopted.
Well, yeah, very cool. And for those that don't know, Rantizo is an Iowa-based agricultural spray drone service provider. And obviously, Cody, who's got this background also in software, had a heart for this article because this announces their software called Acre Connect. And I agree with you, Cody. I think precision agriculture is one of those booming market sectors as well. Collin, I'm going to go to you next since you were last time. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a use case that is needed. I know that it's a booming industry for agriculture. It's one of those applications where it's like you can pretty well define what the ROI is going to be when you put a drone out there and can assess what the health of the crop is. So I think it's a really great application that they're diving into here. What I would maybe not know about the industry as much, but would have a question about is what does this enable a pilot to be able to do coming off the street and maybe is a little light in the agriculture experience? Does this software really allow them to be that subject matter expert and to have a deliverable for clients? I guess, that's my question looking at this, is how far does it get someone down the road to help them? And if they can do that in a really meaningful way, I think that's going to solve issues with having a lack of drone pilot capabilities, and really help our agriculture space in a big way that hasn't been done before. So if they can deliver on that, that's going to be huge.
Yeah, I'm going to go to John next. I think one of the hurdles for these kind of operations are the approvals needed. You can't spray these kind of substances from a drone or from any aircraft without special approval under Part 137. I recall the FAA last year at their drone symposium talking about streamlining, no pun intended, streamlining that process because they had so many applications for precision ag just like this. John, I'd love to hear your thoughts on precision ag or this software or anything about this article.
Sure. I mean, at the very beginning, ArmUS, the company that I founded and as well, co-owned, we brought in the Agris. This is Agris 1.0. It might have been like 0.50 or 0.5. And I was able to, operate that bird, and by simplicity, it just had basically a pump, a tank, and a couple sprayers. I mean, there was very little automation that was built into the original Agris concept idea and being, useful in the crop spraying world. We took it out there. We have a number of farmlands here in Utah, areas that, and there was a lot of skepticism, and there always is about trying to implement new technology into the old farmer, as Cody had mentioned. The problem that I've kind of seen of that adoption is that it's still very fragmented, even with all of the problems with trying to get the 137, trying to get the software. Which software do you use for whatever drone you're going to pick with whatever, processing that you do, which I work with my tractor that's John Deere. And, all of these are still, and the industry is still like that to some degree, that kind of enterprise solution. Well, there isn't, always a perfect path for the guy that you're like, hey, I'm selling you a solution. I'm not selling you the drone. I'm not selling you my specialty flight skills. Here's what you get with the end. And the decision that the farmer has to make is based on your ability to sell that solution, because again, you can have, they don't know the difference between NDVI, multispectral, hyperspectral, RGB. They have no idea. They have very little understanding of that, but they know what a sprayer does. You know, they know what it's supposed to do. Do they have any idea about drift? You know, whatever the heck that is. You know, they don't know a lot of this stuff. And so to have a company that can kind of lay out the whole thing, from accountability for the pilots or whoever they're going to be, whether it's a service or maybe, again, it's just a guy that's picking tomatoes in the morning. That's what he does. He walks over to the drone, launches, does what it's supposed to, comes back, finishes picking tomatoes the rest of the day. You know, it's kind of the adoption takes a little time, and it's great to see that we're still pushing on that particular industry. I think there's still a lot of work to be done to get that, you know, again, full solution set ready to go. But that's my thoughts on it. I think keep pushing the boundaries on how the new farmers instead of the old guys are coming along to be able to accept and be okay with what the costs and what the time and what everything's going to be. So that's my thoughts on that article. Great though. Great job, Cody.
That's great stuff. And John, that's really your comments, I think, are a perfect segue for Lacey, because when you think about enterprise solutions, that's really what Carahsoft, you know, those holistic end-to-end solutions is what Carahsoft focuses on. And I recall writing a blog about precision agriculture, Lacey, for your team, you know, and I think people think about Carahsoft and they think, oh, DOD, and they think government. But, you know, there's Department of Agriculture. I mean, there's Department of Interior. There's a whole bunch of different federal agencies, not to mention the state, local, tribal, territorial, that care about precision ag. So from where you sit, as you were reading this article, what was going through your head, Lacey?
Yeah, so I loved this article. So Cody, I'm glad you picked this one too, because I can relate to it a little bit too. I grew up in a small town, lots of farms, lots of land everywhere. So it's always fascinating to see how some of this agricultural technology is evolving and some of these applicable use cases, because I mean, I can tell you I've never seen a drone flying around a farm or even anywhere nearby where I'm from, but I think they're probably a little farther behind, and hopefully we'll get there one day. But you know, as it relates to government, when I read this one, like Don said, it's, you know, there's outside of just, you know, your traditional farmers, there's tons of farmland across the U.S. that, you know, is owned by USDA or the Department of Interior, and lots of government use cases that I think are applicable, especially when you look at that enterprise solution and that enterprise sale. There's also some government grants available as well that could be applicable to, you know, local farmers to use, or, you know, state agencies to use where it makes sense to, you know, if they were to partner with USDA or partner with Interior. So that was some of the things kind of going through my mind as I looked through this is, okay, how do we maybe, you know, uncover some of these ways for essentially either the government or, you know, for other farmers, like get this type of technology to be able to use it, to pilot it, to see how it works, and you know, prove some of those use cases. Because again, I think it's really interesting. Obviously, the spray drone is really interesting. A couple of years ago, I saw a similar one that was like a seed drone that would fly over and like drop seeds to be planted. Which
reforestation, huge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was like super interesting. So I think, you know, it's definitely the future of what we'll see to allow you know, to be more efficient and more effective in agriculture. So really fascinating stuff.
Awesome. Cody, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to kind of wrap up any closing comments before we get to our little sponsor message here.
Yeah, no, I think what everyone said, I echo a lot of it as well. It's just, it's awesome to see how it's continued to evolve, and it is something that we look at in across different industries. But what John said really is the kicker for me, and is how do we not just provide a one-step process in between their day-to-day lives? Because if you interrupt one thing to, you know, insert another solution, that's just breaking the chain of really not streamlining things for them and having them truly understand the outcome. I think that's the biggest thing is giving them just an easy out of the box solution that they can say, hey, if I'm getting 30% more yield and it's going to cost this, and every part of that solution is taken care of, we have a way easier conversation, and adopting it will be a lot more prevalent across the United States and beyond. But yeah, I'm excited to kind of continuously see also the agricultural industry just adopt more technology, and there's a lot of cool stuff out there. This is just one accord for it. So.
Yeah, it's a great use case, and you're right. The yield, again, pun intended, is really significant in this area. All right, we're going to take 2 seconds here, and once again, thank our sponsors, without whom the show is not possible. So we got TruWeather Solutions, our buddy. Weather's always important to everybody. Mark 43. You're going to hear from them in June. They'll be doing a product release with us on their computer-aided dispatch and records management solutions that are relevant to the drone community. We also have Akin, of course, a gold sponsor of our LawTech Connect event we just had last week, and Valmont. They'll be sponsoring our Full Crew Live from the Energy Drone Robotics Coalition Summit next month. So we thank you guys for everything you do and for supporting all of our work. All right, we are on article number 3. This is Lacey's, and you know, this is not what you would think as a drone article, but I love it because it's highly relevant to drones, right, Lacey? So I'm going to go ahead and let you tell us what this article is about and why you thought it was important.
Yeah, of course. So, yes, there were a couple reasons that I picked this, and like you said, Don, it's maybe not what the article you would typically think of if you're looking for like a drone-focused article, but this article really outlines the DoD's recently released cybersecurity strategy for the Defense Industrial Base, or the DIB, and basically what this one covers is really just the relevance around the significant business risk that's tied to cybersecurity. That's an important piece of the national security mission and relevant to every contractor, every technology manufacturer, and every company that is doing business with the DoD. So this new strategy, really just outlines, secure requirements related to technology throughout the defense industrial base and kind of what that strategy looks like over the next couple of years. So I picked this one because I thought it was really interesting, and I thought it was very relevant to the drone space as well. And Dawn, this one also ties in a little bit to the article you mentioned at the beginning that you wrote around the blue UAS and green UAS programs that are coming out of DIU. I also thought this was super relevant too, because as most of you probably know, at Exponential last week, AVSI and DIU announced a strategic partnership around the security of these drone programs, and specifically around drones. So this article coming out from the Pentagon ties in perfectly to that, and just around the NDAA compliance, and making sure that these drones have NDAA TA compliant manufactured parts. We're obviously collecting a ton of data using a ton of AI tools, imagery analysis tools, and all of those things have to be secure and meet the DoD's requirements for it to be able to be utilized. So that was kind of part of my reason or all of my reasons for picking this one. And again, thought it was a really great, relevant article. Carahsoft is doing a lot around, supporting the DIB to meet these security requirements. Separate conversation, but I'm always happy to connect with anyone in the DIB around how your organization can help meet some of those requirements and move forward with progressing towards that strategy to better align. But again, really relevant to anyone doing business or looking to do business with the Department of Defense.
Yeah, Lauren from your team, Lacey, had a great explanation about some of the cybersecurity requirements for the DoD in particular, and other federal agencies, whether it's FedRAMP and some of these other things. Mm-hmm. When she was on the Dawn of Autonomy in February. And by the way, I did write an article on that for AVSI Exponential. You can find that also on my website. Really great stuff, all from Caresoft about these requirements, because they can really be a nightmare to navigate. And John, I'm going to go to you. I'm just going to put you on the spot, my friend, because you worked for a company that was a Chinese drone company in the past. I know you've got really strong feelings about this. I think a lot of people do when it comes to cybersecurity and what is the risk? Is it real? Are some of the things that have been happening around cybersecurity, whether it's certain bans and whatnot, are they really necessary? So opened up the floodgates there, John, for your deep thoughts. Go for it.
At the end of the day, when I look at cybersecurity or how to protect data, I always have to ask the question, what is the data? Is it your name? Is it your location? Is it the pictures? Is it the images, the video? Is it the GPS coordinate? Blah, 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 blah. And there's never a defined answer of what that is. If it's a Chinese-made drone, well, they're definitely taking your data. And I'm like, well, then that implies that anybody can take your data, because even U.S. companies have the ability to collect that data. And when they collect it, what do they do with it? So we're not looking at, well, it's American, so they're trustworthy, or they're a NATO country, so they must be trustworthy. No. If you don't build the exact definition of what data is acceptable to be used or not used, or what components specifically. Okay, I had people coming up to me years ago and telling me, the motors are made by DJI. I'm like, do you know what a motor does? It's like saying that the tracking of your car is happening because you have rubber tires on your, the rubber tires are made in China, so they must be tracking you. I'm like, so we have a really big disconnect, I think, between those that are making what we call cybersecurity rules and those that are actually using it. And then country of origin is a really difficult one for me, because I can assure you that even Auto Robotics doesn't know where 99% of the drones are flying, who's operating them and doing, unless the user consents to send that information. They have to consent to that. And so other than that, it's just a dumb drone flying around, taking pictures for you and collecting its own data on its own, piece of software or whatever it is. I don't know what else further you can go, but a slight disconnect with the top tier guys that are saying, well, it's just from China, so it's got to be bad. And you're like, if you say these are the rules and some Chinese company says we can abide by those rules, and you've definitely gone through and double checked those and made sure, we're not doing it in the depth of what I think people are saying, even with the American companies. So, that data flies around, it goes somewhere. I don't care what anyone says, the second it hits the internet, it's gone, so.
Yeah, well, John, clearly, this is a show unto itself. We could debate this all day long. And
100%.
Frankly, I've heard a lot of voices on one side and not on the other, but I'm just going to say one thing, and I'm going to hand it over, I guess, to Cody next. Having been in the national security space for, about 30 years, my career, I'm not going to elaborate here, TSSCI clearance, etc. You said something that I think is highly relevant, and a term that DIU, if you watch and listen carefully, is using. It's trusted. Okay, so you picked up on something that is highly relevant. So yes, perhaps a German company or a Canadian company or a US company could do X. The question is, does our government trust that they will or will not do that? And what level of trust do they have in that? And I think that now we're getting into political considerations, also national security considerations. And so I think that's why you're seeing some of this as well. And I'll just leave it at that. But I did want to highlight that word trusted, because it is being very deliberately used. If you look at DIU's website, if you will read any of the articles about what they're doing, same with the green program. So that aspect of this is very significant. But Cody, over to you.
Yeah, I think this article is super relevant right now, because there's just so much talk around the ban and the understanding of like the data and where is it going and who's getting it, and at the end of the day, everyone is getting it, right? Or they're passing it around and they're collecting it if you're consenting. But I also think it's like, hey, it's out there and people are thinking about it more and more. You see Randall Warnes of Anzu Robotics and his team, right? I know John. I know.
We'll go back to John if we have time. But
yeah, right. I want to hear his comment. I had to bring it up. I was just curious, but it's being out there, right? And it's more and more. It's being able to understand how we comply from government and them using it, but it also is just more of a problem of like, hey, how many recreational users are still out there using Chinese made drones or other drones that are collecting data. And now, okay, so those, are we collecting that data and those are okay for them to use and understand that they might be flying some situations or giving data off that's just as important in some cases as government related officials or other people that are using these drones in certain areas that maybe that data would want to be collected more than other areas. It's just interesting in that way, but I think it goes down to more of there's security problems all across the industry. I mean, there's scams going around and that have been around from the beginning, right? Of collecting and targeting the drone industry from security. So it's not just from the drone related, I guess, hardware or software that we're collecting it, but it's just an industry. I feel like it's been picked on in some ways as a security issue because, hey, it's this new technology, new relevant, technology at that point and now today, but it's just something that is going to continuously be a conversation until we define, like John said, what is cybersecurity and what.
Yeah, well, and here's one of the, I want to say two things quick, and I'm handing it over to Collin. I'm sorry, I keep jumping in, but like, man, this is something that is like I'm fired up about because look, on the national security side, we don't open our playbook. We don't tell people why we might do something because we don't want them to know we know what they're doing, right? So there's a lot of vagueness and lack of transparency, like very deliberately in this space, I think, for a reason. So anyway, awesome. And Lacey, I guess you're reeling them in with this article. People are fired up and they're dialing in. So everybody out there, you got comments, you got questions, please. We are live, so jump on in the chat. The other thing I was going to say, Cody, real quick is to your point about the recreational flyers and DJI, like the FCC has a rulemaking to be, they're looking at like not letting them connect to our anything. They might not be able to fly soon. So like that is something that's brewing in the background, just so everybody knows. Something we talked about, by the way, at Law Tech Connect with Jennifer Richter from Akin, who's an expert in Spectrum. But that rulemaking is out there right now as we speak. So Collin, over to you. Just a light topic, and we're going to end it with you.
Yeah, super heavy topic. It's I have a lot of thoughts around this. We at FlyRoute have a lot of skin in the game on this topic, just being that our entire fleet of currently 55 drones are all DJI. So, if that has to change, that's going to drastically impact our business. So much of this, I think, is I would like to see American manufactured drones be able to compete on a quality level. First and foremost, that would be amazing. But until that happens, our responsibility at FlyRoute, we have to go to school programs. We have to pitch them on, hey, here's why this drone that we chose to use is the safest that you can use. It has the best technology as far as integrating with the camera equipment that they're currently using. Coaches can get the film at these sporting events on the sidelines, and it's built out to be able to sustain a strong feed. It has the zooming capability. I mean, I could go on and on as to why these drones that we use are the best. And it's just going to drastically change. And from a security standpoint, that it really is kind of like John was talking about is that what's the data that's being captured. If we're concerned about data privacy, I think we can probably all agree there's more room for concern as to the device we're all carrying around in our pockets as to what that's capturing. You have to physically go into your phone and turn off. I don't want Google to know where I'm at every waking moment of every day. These are things that are automatically just built into these programs that we don't even know about. It can hear us. I'm more worried about that. I think there's more conversation that needs to be had around that than where my drone's flying. Unless you're doing something you're not supposed to, I don't think there's any concern in this industry as far as data collection. I mean, their argument could be made for, law enforcement and government agencies. I get that. But as far as, 90% of the drone service providers that are out there probably don't have to worry too much about the data that's being collected.
Yeah, great point. I will say one last thing, from a Homeland Security standpoint, Department of Homeland Security is carved out 16 different critical infrastructure sectors. Stadiums and schools are in one of those sectors as public buildings. Obviously the DIB, Defense Industrial Base, is another sector within it. So, man, we could keep talking. I also want to give Lacey 30 seconds, but Lacey, before I do, our buddy and superfan Kay Cruz is out there just saying, hey, remember, it's not the country of manufacturing, it's the type of drone. It's simply the person who collects or hijacks the data and sells it, like over the last 3-4 years, highlighting Americans in sensitive areas selling to foreign adversaries. It comes down to the individual. My iPhone collects things every day. He's off to wildfire training and out. But yeah, right, absolutely. But sometimes there's laws that allow governments to tap into companies and the data that they've collected from individuals, even if those individuals have nothing to do with it. So there's that.
I just want to say one thing before we finish. Yeah, it's just a perception versus reality. And that's the challenge we have to overcome. The perception that we got a lot of problems with data and they're going off somewhere, and the reality. We have to have these things separated, and define that. So Lacey, great pick on this article, obviously.
Yeah, fired everybody up. So Lacey, just 30 seconds back to you.
Yeah, awesome. I'll keep it quick, but no, I appreciate the conversation on this one, and would love to continue it with anyone that wants to talk more about it. So.
Yeah, and we might have to do a whole nother show just on ANZ.
I know, right? If we get a whole
drones that I saw, like made in Malaysia, my brain went right to Zoolander. If anybody watched Zoolander, the Prime Minister of Malaysia. Anyway, moving on. Every time I see that drone, I think Zoolander and Will Ferrell, and I just crack up. Okay, let's go. We are now going to our final article of the day. Last, but again, certainly not least, this is your article, Cody, and it's all about, speaking of stadiums, again, you've got a heart for this in the work that you do. This is about some drone incursion. So tell us what this article is about and why you picked it.
Sure. So, in a nutshell, that if you've watched an NFL game in the last year, you might notice a few of the games had gone to a abrupted commercial break, and whoa, what happened? And a few of those broadcasts even panned over to a drone that had overflown into a stadium, and that's what they're having to do. Officials are having to stop the game more and more. The specific article talks about a occurrence that happened November 16th of last year, where there were 5 illegal drones that were overflying the stadium, 2 of which caused officials to have to pause the gameplay. And there's a few different, things at play here that we can get into. And one of which is that maybe the TFRs are maybe a little outdated as far as the structure of them. For those who aren't familiar, the TFR, temporary flight restriction, is currently built 3-mile radius around these professional sports stadiums for NFL and MLB, NCAA, and it's built 1 hour prior to the event and 1 hour post event. So no overflying, but the fines for doing this is up to $30,000. And I've heard of very few circumstances where that fine has been instituted. That's another topic we can talk about. But what I was surprised about in this article that I really wanted to learn more about is that how many of these flights have occurred where there illegal drone activity over sporting events. And the article stated there's 2,500 illegal drone flights reported by the NFL just in last year alone, 2023. So, and that doubled from the year prior to that. So there's a rise of this. There's definitely a widespread issue in how to manage the national airspace system. How do we discourage these would-be offenders in these no-fly zones? And it's definitely a relevant topic for FlyRoute as a business. I think Cody mentioned earlier when we were talking about this that this is the fun topic, but when I read these articles, I'm like, oh, my blood is boiling right now just reading this, because it's just putting a bad rap on the industry. Reputable companies, reputable operators are really just it's putting the industry in a very bad light. If we can't nip this in the bud early, there's a lot of industries outside of athletics that might suffer from this as a result. So I would really like to see a solution, a few solutions that the article talks about that are in play. these days is of course the fine. That's supposed to discourage, would be offenders from doing this. No one wants to get a $30,000 bill in the mail or in person. So, doing more of these fines, I think, will discourage if they can do that. The problem is some of these local law enforcement agencies don't have the authority to issue these fines. And other things, could be geo zones, like having the inability to even fly in these areas. The downside to that is that we as operators, if you do have legal authority to fly in these areas, sometimes that creates some additional red tape and loopholes that are just unnecessary to have to jump through if the manufacturer is putting loopholes on top of what's already being done in the FAA airspace. So overall, I think, a relevant topic that affects all industries, even outside of athletics. And I just hate to see these types of events happening more and more in the news.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, Collin, that you got the right approval to fly at CSU in Fort Collins during the Colorado Drone Air Show. I remember that night. There was also a big drone light show that the crowd was enamored with. So, two big things happening right there by the football field, within 3 miles of that field, clearly over that field, and you're right. It's the bad guys, the folks that aren't following the rules, that might make your business a little bit harder on a daily basis. Lacey, I'm going to go with you next. Were you surprised by some of these numbers?
So I was surprised when the 2,500 illegal UAV flights over stadiums. Very surprised. And it's certainly, an interesting article. And I think, especially on the government side, which, kind of related in some ways, we've seen a lot of emerging like counter drone technologies and figuring out, okay, how the government's doing this. How do we restrict these drones from flying into spaces they're not supposed to go into? Or, hey, if they are there and there's something suspicious detected, how do we stop them from flying in these spaces? So I've definitely seen a surge in the counter drone technology and, some of those types of interesting use cases as well that can probably be relevant across a number of industries. But yeah, I definitely thought this was an interesting one. And it certainly doesn't paint the drone industry in a good light. Because like we talked about in the last article too, it's, most people who are flying drones aren't doing anything bad. That's not their intent. But you have scenarios like this where, it paints it in a bad light and you don't really know what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Cody, you're a drone pilot and you're reading this. What are your thoughts?
I get fired up over this topic. Collin and I have actually spoke off topic on a podcast about this because it's something that I grew up playing sports. I love sports. And I have gotten sent videos of people flying over stadiums during games more than I think I've gotten any other videos sent to me by friends and family and people that are just like, oh, did you see this? Did you see that? And it's unfortunately, right, it's like it comes down to people don't know what they don't know. And oftentimes it's unfortunately recreational flyers that are conducting these flights that just really don't understand the rules in a lot of these cases that they can't fly during these games. I think before this Baltimore one came up, like 2 years ago it was, at the Cincinnati Bengals playoff games, you had a guy literally like 15 feet above the field flying right over the heads of the players. And it's like, I mean, if you've been to an NFL game or they have the guide wires for the fly cams, right? The overhead sky cams, that you can't see that if you're flying a drone and all of a sudden you're going 10 miles per hour, 50, whatever you're flying at on your controller, you are not going to be able to see a guide wire that quickly to stop. So one, that guy was super lucky that he didn't hit anything. But I'm pretty sure Collin could correct me if I'm wrong here, but that was one of the first real big fines that we did see. I mean, he posted it on YouTube. He was like praising it. He's like, oh my, I'm so proud of this flight. And unfortunately, he got roasted hardcore in a lot of the groups and comments because quite honestly, he just didn't know. He had no clue that was even not a thing. And unfortunately, ignorance and didn't really work in his favor in this case. But I think it does come down to like, how can we mitigate it from the get-go, right? Or educate these recreational people, or just even people that may have their Part 107 and don't realize it or don't know, and having counter drones, counter drone solutions that unfortunately will cause more hoops to jump through for people that are flying at these games properly, but it needs to be in place to really counteract a lot of this stuff, because it is a bad light for
if you've taken the trust test, which Congress mandated the FAA create, it's like takes 5 minutes to take it or whatever, you get your little certificate as a rec flyer. I don't even know if this is covered on there, honestly. I forget, maybe it's 20 questions or whatever it is, and maybe they rotate them, I don't know, but this is a big deal, and it really gets down to the professionalism of being a pilot. And I think there still are pockets of people out there that don't appreciate that when they put something up in the airspace, you've just become a pilot. John, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's kind of a damned if you do or damned if you don't kind of situation, because the big issue is, is it education? Are we not educating the people well enough that when they go out there and they buy a drone from Best Buy, that they're told they can't fly in a stadium specifically?
Yeah, it's not, John, it's not, we don't make manufacturers put that in the box.
Yeah,
and honestly,
we don't want to.
That's the thing. That's where it needs to go. Because
100%. Yeah. Because there was a time, I owned a hobby shop, ran a hobby shop, we all of a sudden started to get these phantom things in our stock. I started bringing those phantom things, and those were not kits where you had to build and create and make and tune and test and do, and you knew your craft. Now I got a consumer walking in there going, hey man, I saw one of those fancy things flying around, and I want to film, I want to do this, I want to do it. We tried our best to try to educate them that, like, hey, you've never flown anything before in your life? Yeah, but these are really easy, right? I mean, my buddy got one. He just, he can take off the sticks and it just sits there, and you're like, yeah, yeah. but there is that loss of like education and understanding that. Now, I go on the other side and go, Cody, how many times? I mean, my kids played football, soccer, and because I've been a drone guy for as long as I've been a drone guy, of course, the subject comes up and says, hey, you know what? Can your dad bring his drone and film the game? And at the beginning, like I said, I'm a good operator. I know my aircraft. I know what I'm doing. I'm certainly flying over people to achieve that. There's no doubt about it, and am I being safe, And to me, in my relative space, I was. However, as you start to see more people showing up at the field, putting up the drone and just willy-nilly flying around without some level of coordination, I'm like, whoa, hold on. I'd have to go walk over and just be like, hey, Dad, I know it's cool, but you just have a lot of things that could be hazards or issues or problems or things like that. And I was just trying to film my son, I was just trying to do, the team told me it was cool. The ref said it was cool, and I'm here, we have that kind of thing. So it's a breakdown of education.
Totally agree. Education. My lawyer brain goes to, maybe we need a little warning on all of these. It says, this is actually an aircraft, like this is an aircraft, with those instructions in the box, etc. I can think of all kinds of ways, but frankly, Congress has to mandate that, because unless they do, that's an expense on manufacturers. They're not going to take that on. They're just not going to do it.
Yeah, and unless we, well, I wanted to, one more comment.
All right, hurry up, dude. We got like 2 minutes left, or 1 minute left now. I get to Collin.
Well, I'll let it go.
All right. I'm sorry to cut you off, John, but we got to get to Collin. Let him 30 seconds wrap up, and then I'm going to close us out today.
Yeah, just the last thing I wanted to touch on that we didn't hit on is that the drone detection systems that are at the stadiums are really doing such a good job of honing in on this problem. We got denied filming at the state championship in Colorado for the high school football championship game, but we used the drone from a fixed position. We turned the drone on. We weren't flying it. Within 3 minutes, we had stadium managers coming right up to us, and they could see the signal that was being put off from the drone and where we were relative to where the drone was.
Yeah.
So if there's anything that's going to, discourage would-be operators out there to do this, it would be that they're going to be found really quickly. So that's a good thing that
Yeah.
technology is taken off.
No, I think that's great. And this topic again lends itself to a whole nother conversation, but we're really dedicating, by the way, coming up, the whole entire month of May starts tomorrow with Airspace Link on the dawn of autonomy, safe and secure skies. So we're going to be talking about those airspace awareness tools, talking to counter drone companies all month long. So definitely dial into that. And if you want to preview what's going to happen, join us on Clubhouse this Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern with Maggie and Sam and all of these companies that are going to be on the dawn of autonomy, from Defense Solutions to High Point Aero Technologies. As I said, Airspace Link, they're our month sponsor. We've got Matrix Space doing Radar Reimagine and more. So I know I missed at least one, if not more. But hey, everybody, this was amazing. I knew this would be a great conversation. Always is with this crew. So great to have all of you. And Collin, did you want to say one more thing before we close out?
No, that really sums it up. So yeah, just appreciate the opportunity to talk about it, and yeah, I hope all these industries rise together and we see a bright future ahead.
All right, very good. We are 1 minute over, everybody, and thank you, John. Thank you, Lacey, Cody, and Collin. We are out here.